Grab your green-eyed girlfriends, Wargamers, because tonight we're taking a little trip to Chinatown. What you see before you is a collection of irregular miniatures. They are in 6mm scale, as you can see. This is called the Mad Ron collection, and it's a series of cars that are fully stacked and fully loaded after giving it some thought and realizing that there's a reason so many YouTube videos are about the game Gaslands, and talking to some people online, I finally decided to break down and go ahead and pick up a copy of those rules. I figured I had the vehicles anyway. I bought these just on a whim. They've been on my to-buy list for, probably 20 years, and car combat is one of those naturals for miniature wargaming. Unfortunately, I've yet to find a solid rule set that really does everything I like. I've tried writing a set of my own. I actually based it on the Full Thrust game and ran it at a Ground Zero Games convention, and it worked well enough, but it still kind of left me wanting more. Hopefully Gaslands is it, but I don't know. We'll find out, and we'll find out sooner than you think. But in the meantime, this is not a Game On episode. This is a Painting Alone Together episode. So grab your paint, settle in, and we're going to try to make this little guy look like the Pork Chop Express. As you can see, I got my reference photos ready to go over there in the background, just off screen. So you know that I'm not cheating, I'm not that good, I'm not doing this from memory. And in fact, one of the things that I'll be doing is, if you see me reaching over, it's just to make sure that the tablet doesn't zero out on me. One of the things I wanted to ask you guys, as you're watching this, I got a big question for you. And that is, what's going to happen with my version of Gaslands? As I said, it seems to be a very popular rules set. But everybody that I see playing is really just enjoying the heck out of playing the, taking advantage of the fact that it's perfectly scaled to Matchbox cars. Now, as you can see, I'm not playing it in Matchbox car scale. I'm playing it in a weird and wacky 6mm scale. Some people call this God's own scale. As you know, I'm a 15mm supremacist. But for a game like this, look, these figures, it was like $10, and I got a total of 8 cars plus a war rig, plus, as if that wasn't enough, but wait, there's more, I also got a couple of motorcycles. And if we have time today, if this Pork Chop Express goes a little quicker than I expect, maybe we'll even paint a couple of motorcycles together. So here's the question I got for you. I did not opt for Gaslands Refueled. I just got the basic Gaslands game. Because I'm using 6mm figures, I did not purchase the Litco standard templates for movement and weapons and whatnot. Instead, I bought a set of half-scale measuring devices that are suitable for scale N cars, which would be the micro machines. And micro machines, it turns out, scale N, they are perfectly suited for use with scale N model railroad stuff. Scale N, for those of you that don't know, actually translates to a wargame model of 18mm. These guys are 1/300, which is 6mm. So I'm going to be using templates that are twice as big as the rules technically call for. Now, I'm not above doing that. I do that on a regular basis. I will play 28mm games with 15mm figures because for many rule sets, the they are far more scale agnostic than you realize, or than the manufacturers would have you believe, particularly those whose rules are tied to a specific rule set. When you play with 15 millimeter figures, a lot of times the ranges for missile weapons actually look a lot more suitable than they do when you're using the scale as called for in the rules. I believe Warhammer is fairly notorious for the fact that their missile weapons have a range of about as far as you could walk in about 2 seconds. Very short ranges. Although, again, these are games, not simulations that we're talking about. So, who really cares at the end of the day? Well, I'm a visual appeal guy, and I think I'm gonna have a little more fun. I think one of the things that I've always found a little bit frustrating when I watch the actual plays of Gaslands is the fact that it's over so quick, and the cars, all of those movement templates just seem so low to me. Like there's a whole lot going on, but the cars barely move, at least within scale. The other nice thing that I've got going for me is that I'll be using I already have a great setup. I'm going to use the city. I'm going to use my Riot City. I've got the roads all laid out. So I can do more of a Pleasantville. I think that was Pleasantville. Wasn't that the name of the original town that Steve Jackson released? I can do something a little more like that. That'll be a little bit different than the usual post-apocalyptic wasteland. I would imagine, I haven't seen the rules yet, as I said, I just ordered it, but I suspect that the rules assume you're playing in a specific universe where the currency appears to be cans instead of dollars. That's fine. We are going to gleefully ignore that, just as we ignore any kind of inconvenient fluff. It ain't about the fluff, it's about the game. And so if we've got a perfectly good set of hazards that we need that are constructed and ready to go, then by gum, that's what we're going to use. Maybe that's naive of me. Maybe you know that. Well, don't tell me. Well, actually, go ahead and tell me. That's what the comment section is for, right? But if you have any insights for that, what using the, quote, wrong size templates is going to do for movement and specifically for shooting, go ahead and toss a comment. Let me know what you think. And then when those rules come in a week or two, we'll throw it down on the table and we'll see what happens. There we go. So we got a nice little red streak there for the Pork Chop Express. Let me show you what we're going to paint. The old Pork Chop Express. We're going to try painting this guy right here. Hey, go back. There we go. That's what we want. Now the question is, how are we going to paint that detailed a picture onto the side of a truck that is this big? And the answer is we're not. Instead, we're going to rely on the 6mm trick of impressionism. And it looks like, those stripes are a little bit off. Let's go ahead and touch those up real quick. Yeah, that side needs just a little bit more. Here we go. All we need is a cool hand and a steady eye. Or is that a steady eye and a cool hand? You be the judge. I'm going to make that just a hair thick right there. And we'll do the same right here. There we go. They don't call them miniatures for nothing. All right, much better. So the next step is going to be a lot easier because we are doing just a little bit of impressionism. You'll have to forgive the focus. So we take our red, and all we got to do is paint a little starburst on the side there. The goal is to make it look enough like the Pork Chop Express that people familiar with the movie will recognize. And so we're going to start with a nice little red starburst right up here. And that should give us room for the little piggy right down in that area. And part of the trick here is going to be waiting for this red starburst to dry. So we paint a nice little red cloud here. And we're looking good. Now, while we wait for that to dry, we're going to go ahead and block in those windows. The windows of the city that I did were very... We'll use that same blue. I went with gray on gray this time, as you can see, and in keeping with the theme, I went with a pale blue on dark blue for the other cars, so we're going to stick with that for Jack Burton's ride. And all we got to do is block in a little rectangle there. And I mean, is that really the only window? That is the only window. All right, cool. And just like that, we're already done. Next step, remember, 6mm figures. You want to go one shade lighter than you think you need, so it'll show up better. Next up, we're going to throw that little piggy down, and I want to show you the difference in the paints. This is what I used for that red starburst. It is a hard red acrylic paint. This, so what color are we looking at here? We're looking at Rouge Tomte, or Tomte red. This one is also a bright red. However, this acrylic paint, the Crafter's acrylic, the Deco Art, is a lot thinner for some reason. And the reason I keep this red around is because it's not actually a red paint. Turns out it is a pinkish. So when we need a pale pink, which we need in this case, there's your little pink piggy. And there's your little pink piggy. And again, we don't even need to get that great of a pig shape. Just a little bit of pink down there in the corner. And we're done. There's your pig. For the old Pork Chop Express. Now, as I was saying, you want to go one shade lighter than you think you're going to need. So, this may look a little odd to start with. As you can see, I got smokestacks. I got all kinds of dark metal armor on this thing. And I'm going to paint my grill work with this dark gray. Not black, dark gray. Because wherever I put the dark gray, we're going to come back and we're going to dry brush a nice bright silver on it. This is going to give us our dark shadows for that silver. We got what looks to be a couple of, sorry for the bump, got what looks to be a couple little guns up top, so we'll block those in. And I don't know if it comes out in the camera here, but I did this is not a pure white. This truck, I started with a nice ivory and dry brushed white to pick out the edges a little bit more. It adds just a touch of depth, and it still keeps it that nice, bright, shiny white. And you may think, but you know, hey John, hey there, Joy of Wargaming, what are you doing painting a bright white truck? This is a post-apocalypse. It's supposed to be rusty and busted and all broke down. Yeah, maybe, but you know what? It's my apocalypse, and my apocalypse is as much about the rebuilding as it is the cobbling together a war rig from scrap. It's not just about rust, it's about knocking the rust off and finding the silver beneath. Rebuilding where you come from. That's what my apocalypse is all about. Also, from a practical standpoint, you can see the wide range of colors I've got for my cars so that I can tell them apart. It's only 6mm. You have to take advantage of every little thing that you can. I want to have at least one vehicle that's a standout white. It's going to pop off the game board, which, remember, my city has very dark streets. So by leaving this guy a nice bright white, A, it's not going to look quite as white. It's just that It's a 6mm figure. Just the size alone is going to dim it down. But B, when I put it against the backdrop of Pleasantville, you're going to be able to see it a whole lot better. And that is particularly true when we're talking about me showing you what it's going to look like. There we go. See, that looks pretty good, doesn't it? What are we going to do with these armor panels back here? That I don't know. But I do know from working with trucks that this little area back here is always a greasy mess. So we're just going to darken that up a little bit too. And then while we're at it, and I'm not worried about the slop because that's what mud does. While we're at it, we're going to paint these smokestacks, these diesel stacks. And then I think we'll be ready to block in a little bit more of the logo for the Pork Chop Express right there on the side. And it might be a little bit tricky getting in there, but that's okay. Because when the chips are down, you know what old Jack Burton says. Who? Me, Jack Burton. I can't remember. It's been a long time since I've seen the movie. I was just looking for a fun and attractive reference that I could use to make this truck look like more than just another post-apocalyptic war rig. And while that dries, I'll show you what the trailer looks like as well. I guess we can darken this up a little bit more too. We got a nice little side door here, which we can darken up a little bit. A little lock there. It's got 2 turrets on top. I don't know what that means rule-wise, but I went ahead and painted those green so they'd pop out a little bit. Yeah, they look a little bit like some kind of a military surplus, which is nice. I could conceivably paint some kind of logo up here. This is probably just some mold flash that could have been trimmed off, but I didn't trim it off because I like it. I think it makes it look a little bit haphazard and a little bit patchy, and we're okay with patchy. It's an apocalypse. Oh, did I just contradict myself between here and here? Very well. So I contradicted myself. I contain multitudes. I'm allowed to do that. And you are too, especially when it comes to a guy like Jack Burton, who owns his own rig, but he works for hire, right? He doesn't always get to choose what kind of load he's hauling. He doesn't get to choose what kind of containers on the back, and the container does not always match the front. So we're okay with that. We can always find a rationale. We can always find an in-universe justification. It's all just board games. And those little stories we tell ourselves to give these games a little more meaning are just one more way that we can add a little bit more meaning to what we do here on the table. They add just one more way of making a little bit of fun. So a little bit of black outline there to help it pop. You can see we got a little racing pig, and looking at my reference photo, we need a couple little dots back here to show that the Pork Chop Express is chugging along. So we'll put 3 little dots for our dear little pig. Oh, I didn't leave enough room for the dots on this side. Oh well. What are you gonna do? To tell you what we're gonna do. We're gonna help these side doors pop just a little bit more. See that little trench line right through there? I think we want to fill that in. So we're gonna get our brush just so, and then drop a little dark line. If it doesn't fill all the way in, that's okay. Hey, but it did. So there you go. My door stands out just a little bit better. Do the same thing on this side. There's your door. And I think we're looking pretty good. I'm gonna rough up the windows here for the front. And then we're going to use our cheater paints. Well, I call them cheater paints, they're just inks. We're going to give ourselves a little more contrast on that bar up top. And there we go. I think some people call the contrast paints cheater paints, but I don't use contrast paints. So I call them the paints I don't use. For me, cheater paints come in a minute. First things first, we gotta silver up all of those dark areas that we slapped in. I think they've been dark long enough. We're just gonna give them a little bit more color. Dry brush to pick out the edges. That windshield is already dry. This, I don't even know what this is on the front. I will know when it comes time to purchase my points for the game itself. I'm not sure if it's a ram or if it's a gun. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to that section of the rules. These look like guns. And these deserve a little bit of chrome. And then we are really going to go to town with the silver for these side panels, which don't look like much just yet. And the passenger side window protector. That window's good. We're going to armor up these fenders. That looks like some metal. And then, of course, the tires we're just going to paint a nice dark black. We'll brush a little silver on there. And we're looking good. Probably could have stood to paint those tires already, but I like to save the tires for last. Tires are going to be hugging the road, chip heavy, and that's about it. So we want to fix that window. Right now it looks a little too plain. So we'll grab our pale blue. And all we got to do is add a tiny little reflection along two sides. And I'm going to go this side and the top. And that's it. And look at that. Put it at a distance and it actually looks like a reflection. This blue down here on this fender is another one that I think is just a little bit too on the nose. So I'm going to add a little blue streak to it to kind of lighten it up. And how's she looking? At a distance, pretty good. Let's check our reference photo. There's your Pork Chop Express. What are we missing? These should really be white, too late. And then we need a little bit of white text in there. Not a problem. We can squeeze a little bit of white into there. All we need to do is make sure that we're focused properly. And then we go, so it's text and it goes up at a little bit of an angle. Let me brace my hands because this is going to be tight. We're just going to put a little streak, Pork Chop Express. That's it. Same thing here. It's going to go this way. We're just going to go a little bit of white, Pork Chop Express. And that is all you need in a scale like this. These paints dry so quick, which is great because the washes that I use take a little bit longer. And where I left that bright shiny silver, we're going to correct that. So see this guy right here? We're just going to dump a little bit of shadow in there like that. Darken it up. And when that dries, it'll have an effect that looks a lot like this guy right here. See that side panel? See the way it just gleams? The rest of it's just kind of gray. That side panel looks amazing. And all you got to do is paint it twice. Once with a block color, once with a little bit of wash. And with these washes, you can go over it a second time if you think it's a little too light. If you think it's a little too bright. They'll even let you fix, I don't know if you can see that. This is a nice bright white. It's a little too white right there, so I'm just going to cover them up. Makes it a little darker and just hides a wealth of painting sins that don't need to be shouted to the heavens. We're just going to cover that right up. There we go. And if you have something like that you think needs a little more texture, paint a little more in. If it's a little too bright, add a second coat. Picks out all those little divots. I think that's a little too bright. We're going to dull it a little bit. I think we're good. I think we're done. Looks really good. I got to do the tires yet, but I'm going to let those washes dry. Now, take a look at this guy. Look at this tiny little fella. What are we going to do with him? I think we should paint him. Alright, I'm going to get this camera out of the way. I'm going to need to get a lot closer to get this done. Thanks for painting with me. Thanks for listening to me ramble for a little while. Again, if you're an expert at Gaslands, if you're not, if you've ever played it and you think you can help me out, let me know. If you think my scaling issues are going to be an issue, if you have any suggestions for how to fix it, I am all ears, because we are all in this together. And even though this is my weird, awkward, and quirky table, it's our hobby, and it can be whatever we want it to be. All we got to do is keep talking about what we want it to be. And the people that don't like what it is, they can hit the bricks. So, keep wargaming. Keep your table yours. In the meantime, I'm praying for you. Ave Maria.